An all-new trade targets board up now at dailyfaceoff.com, and there's an all-new number one on your board, Frank. It is, of course, JT Miller. What's the latest with Miller, the Canucks, and the potential suitors?
Well, I kind of liken it to the scene in my favorite movie. It's my favorite drunk movie, by the way. If I'm had a few drinks and I'm not passing out, Wolf of Wall Street is my go-to. And when he's like, I'm not leaving. Well, that's not what JT Miller's saying, but he ain't leaving the number one spot on my trade targets board until he gets traded. He's there now. The Canucks are working on it. He's ready to move. He's signaled to them that he's ready to go. Their play on the ice signals completely that change is necessary. And look, it's been a difficult spot for them to be in. Everyone in the league recognizes the friction that's there. They recognize his age and the money and term left on his deal. And they see the drop off in his play and they wonder, is this the right fit for us at this particular moment? And there's been plenty of teams outside of the New York Rangers that have stepped up. There was some reporting yesterday that it's Rangers or bust. I don't think that's the case. I think the Carolina Hurricanes have been working incredibly hard. I think they've presented a few different potential opportunities for Vancouver, whatever fits their fancy. Obviously haven't gotten it over the finish line, but I believe outside of New York that no one has done more work on the Miller file than the Carolina Hurricanes.
Interesting. And like you said, not going anywhere. He will stay there till he's moved. And again, that's the topic of our poll question. Will he still be a Canuck 7 days from now on February 1st? Let's talk about another name in your top.
My answer to that is no, by the way.
You think it's in the next week here?
Yeah, I just think they have to pull the Band-Aid off. I mean, they could get through the end of the season and they could, basically say to their locker room, hey, we're not trading him and you guys need to figure it out. But if that were going to be the case, they would have already done it. And I don't think you can let a season where, again, as poorly and inconsistently as they've played, they're 10 good days away from kind of really firmly being in that 7-8 spot in the West, or at least the 8th spot, and having a real chance to lock it down. Don't waste an MVP caliber season from Quinn Hughes because you couldn't figure out a deal. It's going to be painful. The return is not going to be great. They've already come to grips with it. Just do it.
I want to ask you about a couple other names in your top 10, one in your top 5. Penguins defenseman Marcus Pettersson is the number one D-man on your board. What kind of sense do you get on them? How do you sense the market will be for him? Will it be strong? Is Pittsburgh maybe going to get a better return than they think because he is the number one D-man on the board?
No, it's not going to be a huge return, but he's far and away their most movable asset. And I'd say they're another team that, outside of the Islanders, is probably the next closest team to continue our conversation that's in the closest to seller position possible. Outside of Pettersson, if you're talking traditional deadline moves, Marcus Pettersson is the one guy as a pending UFA. I'm going to maybe lump Drew O'Connor in there as a fourth liner, but who are the guys that really bring you value if you're Kyle Dubas that you can easily move on from without blinking? So it just seems like a wash, rinse, repeat type scenario. Move him out, get some assets back. If you want to take those assets later and package them for something else that you think could help you in a quick little retool, a 1 or 2 year window to maybe try and get back in a playoff spot with Sidney Crosby, not all that different than what the Washington Capitals have tried to accomplish with Alex Ovechkin. That's the route to go, is use someone like Pettersson to move on.
Next team I wanted to ask you about is the Buffalo Sabres. Cousins and Byram have been in your top 10 for a while now, but another name joins them on your board, and it's another young name in Jack Quinn. So a third young Sabre is in your top 15, Frank. What is Kevin Adams going to do here? Because you just said a minute ago you don't have them lumped in with the New York Islanders as a true traditional seller. So what is this Sabres front office going to try to accomplish in the next 6 weeks?
Well, I'd say that your guess is as good as mine, because they were in a spot earlier this season where they were floundering. And I think Kevin Adams resisted the urge with the number of teams calling to pull the trigger and potentially to save them from themselves with the damage that you can do when you make a trade as your team is struggling as mightily as they were. They've rebounded. They're still not obviously squarely back in the mix, but they have played better of late. And Jack Quinn is a guy that, going back to November or late October, teams were calling on because I thought quite legitimately. And if you go back to the beginning of the season with, my 10 breakout stars that I have, I thought Quinn could have been one of those guys this year. He missed such a significant chunk of time that I figured, hey, this is someone that was forgotten. He, had such a good rookie year and burst onto the scene that I was like, this guy has something. And it's not all that different than in that year that a bunch of Sabres had career years that you were thinking this team is definitely on the rise. And then they took 2 steps backwards. And in Quinn's case, obviously the time missed didn't help. So he has seen time as a healthy scratch. I think the Sabres aren't really aren't really quite sure what to make of where his development path is going from here. But I know that teams have been interested in following.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.